It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. We are a weekly sports talk show. We have 10 topics of the hottest sports topics of the week, and we discuss those, go back and forth on them. A lot of good talks about what's happening in sports today at the college, pro, and even high school level. I am Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. As always, I am joined by my partner, Brandon, the Coach Perry. Brandon, what's happening, my friend? How you doing this week?
Hey, Pat, how's it going? I'm doing pretty good. Hope you're doing well hope you're doing good tonight as well. We've got a great show, I know, for you two tonight. So let's jump into some of these hot topics.
Yeah, it's been a busy week in sports, obviously, with the NFL in full throttle with games, but also coaching hires. We're going to get into all of that. Make sure, folks, as you watch us, or if you haven't seen us before, make sure you go on YouTube and subscribe at Comeback Sports. That's Comeback Space Sports in YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. Check us out. A lot of good stuff up on there. First topic of the night, though, is the NFL playoffs. We're going to start with the NFC playoff games, where we had the Bucs defeating the Saints, and then we also had Green Bay taking down the Rams over on Saturday. So two pretty good games. I actually thought these were probably the two funner games of the weekend, although the Chiefs-Browns game was awesome on the AFC side. We're talking about NFC for now. Brandon, what did you think of the two NFC games?
I think, like you said, those are probably the two best games of the weekend. I think you got the best football played in those two games as well. And especially in that Saints game against the Bucs, that was obviously two of the best going up against each other. We're getting, obviously, again this weekend with Brady versus Rodgers, which we'll talk about later in the show. But that game between Brady and Breeze was pretty amazing. Obviously, Breeze kind of looked off the mark, didn't play as good as I know he would like to, especially if that's his last game and might be retiring. Sadly, I don't know if it's official. I don't think I've seen official yet. I know we saw that Phillip Rivers is retired, but I don't think we have seen if Drew Brees has yet. And it would be sad if he did. Obviously, we'd be losing one of the best. But that was honestly a game of the top 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time. And Brady played pretty good. But I think the defense really is what put him in the position to really take the control of the game and to win it. The defense played well, intercepting Breeze twice. They put him under pressure most of the game. So I think that was really what set the tone. So Tom Brady really just didn't have to do too much. Just came out and freaking basically managed the game. Leonard Fournette played great. Once again, we've talked about him on this show before, but he has really proven himself as a receiving back. He once again did it in this game, was receiving and running the ball, I think over 100 yards combined between the two. So he had a great game. So, yeah, I mean, the Bucs just really looked good overall, beat the Saints, and they're moving on. And then in the other game, I think it was a little bit of a shock for me. I thought you were going to see a little bit better of a game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Green Bay Packers, but I think it came out to show that Green Bay is really legit, and they deserve that number 1 seed right now, playing at a high level. Coach Matt LaFleur has had them playing at a high level. We'll talk about him later on in the show as well. But Aaron Rodgers is just looking great right now. But here's the thing that I was surprised about. I thought you would see Jalen Ramsey get a little bit better of Davante Adams, but really it was vice versa of that, where you saw Davante Adams pretty much getting anything that he wanted. Jalen Ramsey was frustrated at times in coverage, frustrated with his teammates at times, blaming busted coverages on them. So I think that's what really shocked me. The Rams defense didn't really come to play, and Green Bay looked legit, and they got the win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was surprising that the Rams defense, which has been pretty dominant all season long, just didn't look sharper in that game against Green Bay. I know Green Bay is one of the best offenses in the league. Aaron Rodgers probably going to win MVP. He's been probably the best quarterback this season with Mahomes and maybe Josh Allen. But I was surprised. It just didn't seem like Aaron Donald was completely healthy. We know he had the torn, I think it was a torn muscle in his ribs or something around torn cartilage in his ribs. And I think it was a tough game for him. He didn't look as good. It looked like there was something wrong there with him. He was very emotional after the game as well. So tough way for him to go out. Like you mentioned, Ramsey didn't get totally burnt on a bunch of plays, but he just didn't look like his dominant self, especially he's going up against one of the best receivers in the NFL, and Devontae Adams. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Bucs Saints game, even though we had two of the most decorated quarterbacks in the history of the league, it was a little sloppy. And I thought the two best players for the Bucs in that game, I got to give kudos to you. You mentioned last week that the Bucs didn't have Devin White. He showed up against the Saints without question. He was all over the field. Yeah, absolutely. He had the big-time interception, but he was making tackles all over the place. They really missed him the week before, and you really saw him play an outstanding game against the Saints. And then you also mentioned Leonard Fournette, who was definitely the offensive player of the game, running the ball hard, also catching the ball out of the backfield. And we've seen Tom Brady, as Patriots fans, we've seen Brady throw it to running backs as good as anybody, and that was their best offensive weapon the entire game, was throwing it to Fournette in the open flat. So that's the type of games that we saw. As much as we think of Breeze and Brady as these two all-time quarterbacks, it wasn't really like a shootout like you would think with two high-profile quarterbacks. Breeze just doesn't have the arm strength anymore. It's like you mentioned, it's unfortunate if he does retire, but I think it's time for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, sad to say, but really that might be the truth, honestly. Moving on to the other side of the bracket, the AFC division, and those two games, honestly, the games are still pretty entertaining on that side. You had the Ravens versus the Bills, and then you had the Browns versus Kansas City. What did you think with those games, Pat? Did you get a chance to watch those?
Definitely. And the Browns-Chiefs game, we got to talk about first. What a crazy game on that side for the AFC. That game on Sunday was just outrageous. I mean, the ebbs and flows of that game. But I think there's three particular plays or instances in that game that we can really talk about. First off is obviously the touchback that happened with the Browns. I think it was T. Higgins was the one that was reaching for the goal line. Ball got knocked loose. It went through the end zone, out of the back of the end zone. So that's a touchback. And what that means is that the offense loses possession. They don't get the ball back. They have to punt it away. They get a free kick to the defense. And it just seems like, there was debate on Twitter the entire time about, what that rule should be. And personally, for me, I think that the offense, if they lose the football out of the end zone, should get it at the 20-yard line. And then whatever down it was, say it was third down, and if you had reached the 20 on the play, that got you a first down, you'd start with first down at the 20-yard line. If it was, third down and, it was past the 20 where the first down marker was, and you have to bring it back to the 20, then it's fourth down and you probably have to kick a field goal or something. So you don't give the team the ball at the goal line if they fumble it out of the end zone. You're still kind of penalizing them for losing it out of the end zone, but you're not losing possession, because I just think that's such a harsh punishment for a fumble out of the end zone when you fumble it out of bounds and you get it right there. Secondly, and you and I were talking about this before the show, that was a helmet-to-helmet hit. And, we were saying before, too, you should be able to use instant replay on that hit. So I don't understand why that's not replayed. It's such a big play in the game, whether, you get called for it and it's not helmet-to-helmet, or they don't make the call and it is helmet-to-helmet. So, unfortunately, they didn't call helmet-to-helmet. The Browns probably would have kept possession. Who knows what would have happened. Second big thing was Mahomes getting knocked out, whether he got a concussion or whether he got choked out, which some announcers were saying, where he just lost oxygen and he clearly was stumbling around, did not go back in the game. I think that's the right move there. I think in years past in the NFL, he would have gone back in. But, over the last 5 to 10 years, they've been doing a better job of concussions and head injuries, and I'm glad he didn't go back in. So that was a huge part of the game, because I think if he stayed in, this would have been a runaway. And then, of course, the fourth down call. I mean, I'm sitting there saying, why don't the Chiefs just run the ball, run the clock out, punt it to the Browns with, I think a minute 20 would have been on the clock. Baker Mayfield would have had to drive the length of the field to score a touchdown. What are they doing? They have their backup quarterback in there, and then Chad Henne just rolls out throws a pass to Tyreek Hill, and the rest is history. And, those are the three, I think, biggest points of the game, and just very exciting parts of the game.
Yeah, well, first, as a coach, I'd like to speak to that point. And Andy Reid just honestly went to the bag of tricks that us coaches do, and we just play the numbers at time. We play the percentages. And at that point, it tells you to go for it. It tells you to go for it because you have a high chance. If you get that first down, the game's over at that point. They don't get the ball back. They don't even have a chance to score. But if you do decide you want to punt them the ball, then they do at that point have a chance to score. So here's the thing there. You go for it. You get it, the game's over. You go for it, you don't get it, you still have a chance to play defense, to defend and win the game on that end of the game. But so it was just the right move. Go for the win, and they got it, and it just paid off. Called a high percentage route to Tyreek Hill in the flat. An easy pass for the quarterback, especially for any quarterback. I know high school quarterbacks that could make that throw 9 out of 10 times. So Chad Henne especially can do that. Does it. Takes himself out of the pocket beautifully, throws a beautiful little pass to Tyreek Hill, and that was the game, really. So they didn't really even get a chance to come back. I know, sorry for Browns fans, but that was it. That was it. That was the end of their season there. But there was a couple other big moments in that game, and like you said, with Mahomes getting knocked out, I think that's really the talk of the week, to be honest. I went back being a coach and watched that play many a times to see. Look back at that play. He kind of gets dragged down, but it's the front crown of his forehead that hits the ground. And that's exactly the force that would actually give him the concussion. So it wasn't from the other player. It was just kind of the way he was dragged down and actually had his head. It almost looked like an old school wrestling move. I almost wanted to eclipse it to like the Stone Cold Stunner, to be honest, where he like drives his head into the ground, and I don't think the defender did it. It's a fast game, split-second decisions are made. It just so happens he tried to grab him up around the collar there, and it just so happens that he kind of drove his head into the ground there, but that did give him a concussion. Surprisingly, like I think most Kansas City fans, I was in shock. I was like, what's going to happen now? But Chad Henne came out, managed the game well, did good. And I think, I've said this before, obviously the best job in the world is a backup quarterback in the NFL. I mean, you get paid tons of money. You rarely have to perform, okay? Even in practice, you don't generally get reps with the first team, okay? So it's like you don't have to do much, but here's where you're seeing why they get paid so much money, because they have to step in moments like that, big moments in a playoff game, and make that 4th and inches pass to Tyreek Hill to move them on to the conference championship game. Another play, like you said, was the hit, and that was definitely a targeting call. The NFL needs to go back and look at that. We're talking about making the game safer. As a coach, I would like to see the game played more safe. It's just going to protect the players, protect the longevity of the game. Football's been under attack for many years now, especially on the safety side. So I would like to see them be able to, like you said, review that hit and review that call. If they did go back, I'm sure they would call a targeting there. And like I said, me and you talked about it before the show started. Daniel Sorensen just seems to hit like that all the time, gets away with it, and he got away with it. But it was a big-time call here that cost them, the Browns, a big possession. If you go back, you call that a targeting penalty. The Browns get the ball on the 1-yard line. You give it to Nick Chubb. You give it to Kareem Hunt. They were both running pretty hard that day. I'm pretty sure it could possibly change the outcome of the game, or at least the way the game was unfolding at that point. So that was pretty big. And then in the other game quickly, I really just think the Ravens didn't really come to play. Buffalo looked really good. They've looked really good all season. Look, it was sad. Lamar Jackson got hurt in that game. Another concussion in the second half. So you saw they erred on the side of safety and didn't bring him back as well. Surprisingly, their backup quarterback came in and played amazing as well. But the Ravens just didn't have enough, and the Bills just pulled it out. So they're moving on.
Yeah, the Ravens came out flat. I don't know what the issue was. I mean, they have a very experienced coaching staff who's been in a lot of playoff games. I don't know what happened there. And sometimes that happens to teams. We've seen it as we've said all along, we're New England Patriots fans. We've seen it with the Pats in the past, about a decade ago when they went up against the Ravens and then they went up against the Jets the following year and just come out flat right away. And when you're playing a good team, you sometimes just don't recover from that. I think that's what we saw with the Ravens, because the Bills weren't great. They were solid, but that wasn't their best performance. But they showed some toughness and some grittiness, and that's why they were able to come away with that win. Now we're going to move on to our third topic of the night, which is the NFC matchup between the Packers and the Bucs. Two outstanding quarterbacks once again in the NFC going at it, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. We're going to talk about the quarterback matchup later on in the show, but as far as the two teams are concerned, Brandon, what do you think about this matchup and the two teams heading into Green Bay this Sunday?
I think here's the hardest game to pick. The hardest game to pick as a coach, as a fan, as an analyst. If you are betting your money, people, and I'm sure people are, this is the hardest game to pick as a bettor, because you just really don't know who's going to win between these two teams. They're evenly matched. Green Bay is playing extremely well right now. I think they proved that last week going up against the number one defense, coming out on top. They have the home field advantage. It's supposed to be really cold this week in Lambeau, so you have a team from Florida obviously coming in. Trust me, this is football. I get it. These guys have been playing, but it matters. It matters slightly. It matters on the muscles, especially warming up. So I'm sure Tampa Bay will get themselves out there early to get themselves acclimated, especially for the temperature. But I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's really going to be probably the best game of the weekend. It's certainly the game that I'm looking forward to watching. I think Aaron Ace Rodgers has really been on point. He's really looking good. I mean, the Green Bay Packers went out and drafted a quarterback, and I think Rodgers is saying, hey, kid, just kind of sit back and watch. Watch the guy dish it out and work his flow. Watch the master at work. And he's really been having a great season, and I'm looking forward to it. And to be honest, I love Tom Brady. He's having a great season. He's proving everybody wrong right now. This Tampa Bay team is full of stars. I love watching them. If you're a football fan, you really love watching it. I've got to give my hats off to Antonio Brown. I think he's been playing really well, been showing how he's a really good asset. I wish he was still playing for the Patriots. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the Green Bay Packers to win this game. I really just think they've proved that they've been looking really strong right now. They deserve that number one seed. Tampa Bay is going to have to go into Lambeau Field. Like I said, Aaron Rodgers is just sleeping in his bed at home right now, thinking about how he's going to carve up that Tampa Bay Bucs secondary. I think they've been playing well right now, but I think they're playing arguably the best quarterback that they've played all season, playing at a peak right now, going into the playoffs. So I'm just picking the Green Bay Packers to win this game.
Yeah, I think it's Green Bay, and I don't think it's even close. I think Green Bay is going to win this one, not by 3 or 4 scores or anything like that, but probably by 10, maybe 12 points. I just think I can't picture Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and even Antonio Brown, although he played in Pittsburgh a few years ago, going into that cold weather and playing well. I mean, we saw in the divisional round, Chris Godwin had a bunch of drops, and he's a great receiver. I think I would love if he came to the Patriots, and he's a free agent, so that would be awesome. But he doesn't. He had a few drops. There were a couple of plays where the catch in the back of the end zone that he just couldn't come up with. That was just a tough catch. I think it was a great throw by Brady, and if he caught it, it would have been a great catch. He didn't catch it. Great receivers got to make great plays. It was kind of a 50-50 ball on that one. But there were a couple other ones where he was in the slot or he was coming over the middle and just didn't hang on to the ball. And I could see him having some drops in that cold weather, because when you try to catch a football in that cold of weather, it feels like a rock. I mean, you're holding something frozen solid, and it's a tough catch to make. Mike Evans, same thing. I don't know if he's going to be able to perform as well in the cold weather, and I don't see anybody on the Bucs who's going to be able to cover Devontae Adams. I would imagine they might try to use bracket coverage on him, go one-on-one on the other side with Valdez-Scantling or some of the other Green Bay receivers, but I just don't see the Packers losing this game. I think they're going to win probably by double digits in that one. So I would definitely be picking the Green Bay Packers.
No, I agree. And just quickly, I mean, to your point, we just saw Jalen Ramsey, who's arguably the best cornerback in the game, go up against Davante Adams, and he struggled. They tried to put him in single coverage a bunch, and it just didn't work out. So I think the Bucs are going to have no choice but to double cover Davante Adams, and obviously that's going to leave other weapons open, and I think Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers is just going to take advantage of that. But moving on to the AFC Championship, that's going to be the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, Kansas City with the big question mark of will Mahomes play? So, I mean, that's really the biggest question mark going into this game, and what are we going to see?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's going to decide everything because I believe Kansas City, for the most part, is going to be healthy for this one. I would imagine Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be available. He almost played on Sunday, but he was a sort of a game-time decision, didn't make it. So I'd imagine he'd be playing this Sunday in the AFC Championship game. So it all depends on Mahomes. If Mahomes is healthy and, Kelsey's healthy, Tyreek Hill's healthy, Hardeman's healthy, Sammy Watkins didn't play last week. We'll see if he's able to suit up this week. But I just think the Chiefs, if Mahomes is totally healthy, I think the Chiefs win. But, if Mahomes is even a little sluggish, if they don't get Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, if they don't get Sammy Watkins back, and they have the same exact guys they had last week, I think there's an opening for the Bills to try to steal this one. The Bills have enough firepower, I think, to try to stay with the Chiefs. But again, I think the Bills have to score first, and then they have to run the ball better than they did in the divisional round. They went the whole entire first quarter, I believe, without running the ball. And they need to – you don't have to have a 100-yard rusher. Devin Singletary and Moss are two solid backs. You can throw it to them out of the backfield as well. But I think you do have to run the ball at least a little bit, in order to beat a team like Kansas City.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think you said it perfectly. I think if Mahomes plays this game, Kansas City wins. They're my pick to win. If Mahomes is healthy and he can get through the concussion protocol, and I'm not saying cheat through the protocol, do it legitly. If he's healthy and he can play, let him play. If he's not healthy and it's against his safety, then don't let him play. But if he's healthy and he can play, by the way, he was at practice today. He returned to practice. Don't think he was taking live reps, but I would think he was there taking mental reps, which is at least a good step forward, a good sign. But if he can play in this game, I think Kansas City wins. Like you said, they just got too much firepower right now. They've proved also why they're the number one seed. Plenty of firepower with that Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman. You left out Le'Veon Bell, which they haven't even really utilized him that much. They haven't needed to because they have so many other good running backs that they've been using as well. And then, like I said, if Mahomes plays, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks right now in the game, offers you so much ability getting out of the pocket to be able to throw the ball. He can run the ball when he needs to. I think people forget that he can actually use his legs and get a first down if he needs to as well. And if that's really what got him into trouble, obviously, and got him hit in the last game. But it's obviously something that helps him out in a lot of situations as well. So you don't really want to take that away from his game, and you want him to keep doing it. Same thing with Lamar Jackson as well. But I think if he plays, I think Kansas City possibly runs away with this game. However, if he doesn't play, and we have to see Chad Henne, I know Chad Henne did a great job. He came in and played well in his limited time last week. He's, I'm sure, gotten a lot more reps this week with the first team. But I just don't think that they'll have enough firepower and enough ability to be able to beat this Buffalo Bills team that is playing at a high level behind Allen, behind Diggs. Their defense is looking good. I'm expecting them to travel well as well, go on the road and play good. I think this is going to be a really good game. I think this is going to be a close game either way, to be honest. But if Mahomes plays, I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I think he's the better quarterback out of the two, even though I think, Josh Allen is certainly on the rise for NFL quarterbacks this season and beyond. So those are probably two of the best younger quarterbacks in the NFL. But we're now moving on to topic number 5, which is two of the best veteran quarterbacks in the National Football League. They're both in the NFC. They're meeting up in the NFC Championship game. That's going to be Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers. And Brandon, this is going to be a lot of fun. The last time I believe these guys they matched up earlier in the season, and Tampa Bay actually beat Green Bay pretty handily in that one. Then before that, I think Brady and Rodgers hadn't met up since 2014 in a regular season game when Brady was with the Pats, and Green Bay actually won towards the end. It was a great game on Sunday Night Football. But this is going to be a lot of fun on Sunday.
Well, yeah, like I said, I think this is going to be an exciting matchup, obviously, of two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Before I dive into that, if you guys are enjoying what you're watching, give us a subscribe, give us a like, follow us on Twitter. Our producer, Ben, I think, has this topic as arms, experience, right? And what's the other one? What's the third one there? I forgot what the third one was.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up as well. But he's got it right, honestly. It's arms versus experience. And you're really going to see it here in the two. You got two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Even statistically, they're both playing at a high level. Brady, like I said, is proving people right now, throwing the ball extremely well. Honestly, he's proving even myself wrong. I thought he lost a little bit of zip on the ball towards the end of his career here at New England. But I don't know, maybe whatever he's done there with Alex Guerrero in the offseason, maybe we all need to start doing that because he's got the zip back. He's got the ball moving a lot better, and it could be just because he has a lot better weapons to throw the ball to. I mean, so and that honestly helps. It really helps. It helps any quarterback. Definitely could see it helping an aging quarterback. But Aaron Rodgers is almost in the same boat. Is not that far behind Brady in age. He's getting up there in age. Like I said, Green Bay was thinking about moving on. They've kind of signaled that by drafting a quarterback, a young quarterback that they have waiting in the wings. But Aaron Rodgers is looking really good right now. And like I said, I think they can wait on that decision for a good maybe 4 or 5 years. I think Aaron Rodgers has got left at this level, and he's looking really good right now. If I had to rate him, like I said, on those three things, I forgot the third topic, but if I had to rate him on arms, I'm going to have to take Rodgers on that one. I'm going to have to take Rodgers on the arm. He's got the arm strength right now, can throw that deep ball. There was a couple of times where his receivers just let him down, threw an absolute dime over the top, and they just dropped it on him. Other times he's throwing the ball on point, like I said, Devontae Adams. But he's really still got that zip on the ball. He's still got that accuracy, just a little bit better than Brady at this point. With experience, I'm going to have to give that to Brady. Obviously. Played in the Super Bowls. He's got the rings. He's got all the experience in the playoffs. He's been in these moments. He plays great in these moments. I think he's going to play great on Sunday. I'm just still giving the nod to Aaron Rodgers. I just got to give him the tip of the cap here. I think Green Bay is going to come out on top.
Yeah, I agree with you. As we talked about when we were talking about the NFC matchup of the show, the third category was brains. So I think with that one, we're probably split. They're both very smart quarterbacks. They've seen it all. So I think we're split on that third category: arms, brains, and experience. But yeah, I agree with you.
That's a tie on brains. You're right.
I think in the cold weather, the quarterback with a stronger arm, plus he does still have experience, even though Brady has more and has the brains. And his team is more experienced in the cold weather. And, Devontae Adams is used to playing in the cold. A.J. Dillon's used to playing in the cold from playing up at BC. Aaron Jones is used to playing in the cold. He's been in Green Bay for a couple of years now. So you have guys that are just so used to playing in that compared to these Tampa Bay players who, they play in Tampa Bay for 8 games a year. Then they also play in Atlanta, in New Orleans every year. So you have 8 home games in relatively nice weather. Sometimes in Tampa, it obviously can rain and so forth. Then you play in a dome 2 more games every year. So you're playing 10 games in solid weather or temperature-controlled areas. And then you're going up to Carolina, which isn't very cold. You get to very, very late in the year. So they're just not used to this kind of weather and these kind of conditions up in Lambeau Field. So I think it's going to be real tough for the Bucs. But you do have Tom Brady. So, I think Brady is going to have to be better than he was this past week. He's going to have to be a little more accurate. He had a couple of throws where I don't think he played bad this past week, but he had a couple of throws where they were kind of lollipop throws that the Bucs were able to come down with. Scotty Miller had one on the sideline in the fourth quarter, I believe, that probably should have been picked off, but it wasn't. So Brady's going to have to be a little more precise. He's going to have to remember what it's like to play in the cold. He's going to have to help the rest of the guys on the Bucs really understand what it's like to play in a game like this because they haven't been anywhere near what they're about to face in Green Bay.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a great game. Like I said, I think it's probably going to be the best game of the weekend. And I got to come to Chris Godwin's defense here. I think he's going to have a bounce-back game. Great player, honestly, has great hands. I think that was just a fluke game. Like you said, he did drop a couple easy ones there. I do not think you will see that from him again. Like I said, great player. I'd love to see him come to New England. We need a weapon like that on the outside. It wouldn't shock me for Tampa Bay to re-sign him to big money. But yeah, I think he's going to have a big bounce back game. But moving on, 7 new coaches in the NFL. Okay, 7 guys got their pink slip. I think it was, I believe, 3 during the season and 4 after the season. I could be wrong on those numbers, but I know I'm right with 7 new hires in the NFL. Pat, what do you got on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, I think it was our first show, actually, we talked about the lack of minority coaches in the NFL. And we saw one minority coach who I think a lot of people just thought was a slam dunk. I think Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator out of the 49ers, he is now the head coach of the Jets. And I know as a Patriots fan, I was like, oh, crap, because I think he's going to do really well with the Jets. I think he's really going to stabilize that organization. You saw with the 49ers this year, and this is a credit to Saleh and also the head coach Shanahan, with all the injuries that they had on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. They played in probably the toughest division in the NFL, and they still played their rear ends off every single week. I mean, they came into actually the Patriots went out to San Francisco, I believe, this year, if I'm remembering correctly. But the 49ers steamrolled the Pats this year. And I know the Patriots weren't, their normal selves this season, but they had no chance in that game. And the 49ers had a ton of injuries. So they've been well coached all year, especially their defense. And now that defensive coordinator is going to the Jets. I think it's a great hire for them. Finally, the Jets do something well and hire a really good coach. But you saw, Jacksonville, I think, is unique because they hired Urban Meyer. He clearly has a fan base, if you would say, down in the Gainesville, kind of that area of Florida that obviously translates to Jacksonville. So I think I understand why they hired him for that. Plus, you hear guys all the time talking about coaches that come into these teams need to know how to establish a program, to run a program. And clearly Meyer knows how to do that. Some of the other coaches, Brandon Staley, the Rams defensive coordinator, he's now with the Chargers. Another young coordinator that, these seem to be hit or miss. Some guys have done really well, some guys not so well because of just their lack of inexperience. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of these guys do. Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator out of the Titans, he's going to be the head coach of the Falcons. So we'll see how he does as well. That Titans offense has been very good. You see the kind of changes they made as soon as Tannehill became quarterback last year, and also they can run the ball with the beast, Derrick Henry. But I think Eric Bieniemy is probably going to be a huge topic for the next few weeks. We'll see what happens. It looks like he's going to get shut out again. I'm actually surprised. I'm sure this is something you want to talk about, Brandon, too. But I know, lately a lot of people have been talking about sort of Bieniemy's past and his troubles in the past, especially when he was at Colorado, both as a player and as a coach. And folks are saying that that's one of the reasons why he's not getting a head coaching job. And for that, I sort of understand. But I think it's a debatable topic.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case because, those things were over 30 years ago for that man. So I hope that he's not still being judged for that and it's holding him back because clearly he's a great NFL coach. He's been great at Kansas City, arguably deserves a lot of credit for where Kansas City is right now and where they have Mahomes playing at such a high level. So I think that's going to be a tough topic. I think a lot of people are going to be questioning why Bieniemy hasn't really already been named as a head coach because he's just as qualified, if not more qualified than some of the guys that you just named. I think the only two that this comes back to bite me, but the last two, the Arthur Smith to the Falcons, here's what I say. I think the Falcons are still going to suck. And I don't think Arthur Smith's going to change that, okay? I think they need a better coach than that. Brandon Staley, I think he sniffed a few butts to get where he is, honestly, in the NFL. He got hired as a positional coach in 2017 with the Chicago Bears. Then he gets bumped up 2 years later to being a coordinator. Now here we are. He's only been in the NFL as a coach for 4 years, and now he's getting to be a head coach? Honestly, I just don't agree with that. And here's another thing. I get it. He was the defensive coordinator at the Rams. The Rams had the #1 defense. I think I could call the defense for the Los Angeles Rams. I think, Pat, you could call the defense for the Los Angeles Rams, and they were still going to be #1. Give me Aaron Donald. Give me Jalen Ramsey. Give me the players that they had around him this year. That defense was unstoppable. Anybody could have called the defense. I think it's one of these things where they're giving Sean McVay a little bit too much credit. I know they've hit on people off of his staff in the past, like Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. He's doing really well. Matt LaFleur with this Green Bay team off of Sean McVay's staff. I think they're trying to go too deep into the well. I don't think they're going to find anything with Brandon Staley. I think the Chargers are going to still suck on just because he's not good enough as a coach. He's a defensive-minded coach coming in to an offensive-minded team with a young quarterback that needs somebody to help him develop, and I don't think Brandon Staley is going to be able to do that. I think Eric Bieniemy makes sense, honestly, for the Chargers to bring him in as an offensive coordinator, as an offensive-minded person, somebody that can develop a young quarterback. He's proven it already with Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think you're going to see that happen, honestly. I don't think you're going to see that happen, obviously, because you got Brandon Staley in there. So it's just something that I think was going to be the wrong fit for the team. It's not going to work out. I think what you're hearing still is Eric Bieniemy might possibly go to the Houston Texans as a head coach. They're still looking to fill their position. We're going to talk about that coming up. And honestly, is that a position that's worth taking if Deshaun Watson's still going to be around? I know one of the gripes that Deshaun Watson has is that he wanted to see Eric Bieniemy brought in for an interview. The Texans finally did that. They did bring him in for an interview. Are they going to go ahead and pull the trigger and hire him? So it's really questionable. But as far as minority coaches, sure, you got Robert Saleh, and he's definitely a minority coach, the first head coach that's a Muslim in the NFL. And I think I have to cheer the Jets organization for doing that. And I think he deserves it. I mean, like you said, he had that 49ers defense playing at a high level. I mean, he didn't have the players like the Rams do. And he's had that team playing great out there in San Francisco. I think he's going to be a great addition to the Jets. I think New England does have to, unfortunately, watch out for that because now we have to face them twice in the division. But I think that was a great hire. Another great hire was Jacksonville, bringing back Urban Meyer. Like you said, bringing back the excitement of Urban Meyer back to Florida. I'm a fan. I'm looking forward to what he can bring back in football. But honestly, if we're talking about questionable past, he had a kind of a questionable past at Ohio State, right? Just got hired as the head coach at Jacksonville. So I just really feel like Eric Bieniemy, it's time. It's time for this man to get a head coaching job. I'm just not sure if you're going to see it happen.
Yeah, I think you're right about what you were talking about before, too, where now it seems like the Sean McVay tree is where all the coaches are being plucked. And that's not always, the Bill Belichick tree has been plucked a lot, and that hasn't really worked out well for a lot of the guys that have become head coaches. You might even see
Bill
it again
O'Brien.
now with Bill O'Brien, which I think he's a better coach than a GM. I think Bill O'Brien, the GM, hurt Bill O'Brien, the coach. But you can see, we're going to talk about in a second why there was more to that than just Bill O'Brien. But I guess I don't understand it with Bieniemy. I know there's some thoughts about back in the early 2000s, he was the running backs coach at Colorado, and Colorado had a big recruiting scandal when it came to having strippers and alcohol and maybe more to recruit kids, and maybe the strippers were doing more than stripping. You know, who the heck knows what happened there. I think Gary Barnett was the head coach at that time. I know he got suspended, I think, for the year or something like that. But there was a big scandal there at that time, and there's rumors that he was part of it. I don't think there's anything saying he definitely was involved in that. But I think the biggest thing with Bieniemy, if you are looking at his past, is he's had a few instances. There's not just one particular thing that's really hurt him. It's been a few different things that, even though they were 20 years ago, they still happened over a period of time. So I think that's what teams are looking at, but no coach is completely flawless. You mentioned Urban Meyer. He had an assistant coach back at Ohio State with domestic abuse problems, and they never fired him. And he certainly had players at Florida, which we all know too well here in New England, that were some issues they've had in the past. So I think teams got to kind of look past that and look at him over the last 5 or 6 years, however long he's been the OC at Kansas City, and really see what he's done during both on and off the field. But you mentioned the Houston Texans. That's going to be our next topic number 7. And when we were talking about this, our producer Ben Kudo wanted to call this Houston, we have a problem. And we've known that this has been a problem for the last few weeks, pretty much the entire season. Jack Easterby, who we've talked about before, is now essentially, he was the de facto GM for Houston with Bill O'Brien. Easterby was sort of this chaplain kind of team mentor, psychologist, whatever you want to call him, with the Patriots. He goes to Houston. They don't really give him a title, but he seems to be in charge. And Bill O'Brien and he are working together on personnel things. And it just seemed to be doomed from the start, and never really, they just seemed to be mistake after mistake after mistake with those two guys in the personnel department, and things just haven't changed since Bill O'Brien left. Now you hear Deshaun Watson, he wants to leave, and now it seems like he's got a problem with the owner, not just Jack Easterby.
Yeah, I mean, huge problem. I mean, first off, it's a good example, like you said, of how going to the well sometimes doesn't always work out for you. And I think going to the well for Brandon Staley is not going to work out for the Chargers. But, yeah, like you said, moving forward with Houston, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem when your franchise quarterback wants to leave. He wants out of town. I mean, we talked about this in previous episodes. So if you're just tuning in now, first, give us a subscribe, give us a like, but go check out those previous episodes where we've talked about Deshaun Watson and the problems in Houston. And I just really think it's continuing. It's gotten worse, sadly, it seems like, over the last week, where rumor has it that Deshaun Watson is saying that it's unfixable, almost like the James Harden situation in Houston, where they're just not going to be able to maybe mend it, and they have to start really looking at trade options to move on to see what they're going to get. But also is possible that if they bring in Bieniemy and they give Bieniemy a chance, that maybe now Deshaun Watson says, hey, okay, they've now listened to me. I'm part of the process. I was part of the process in bringing in the head coach. Maybe he can get part of the process and now in the roster, which honestly at this point, when you're a franchise quarterback and you're that valuable to the franchise, I think he has every right to be in this position to kind of not really pick who he wants exactly, but have a say in who they're going to hire as a head coach and who they're going to hire as a GM, and the roster that they're going to put around him and the weapons that he's going to have. And so I think this is a huge problem right now. I know we talked about it. Like, if I'm any other coach in the league, or if I'm any other GM, I'm like salivating right now at the opportunity to go out and get a once-in-a-lifetime quarterback in Deshaun Watson, a talent that you might not see for a while again. I mean, this guy's great. He can play in the pocket, play outside of the pocket, can move the pocket with his legs, high accuracy, high character guy. He's that franchise quarterback that you want. And I'm just really shocked that the Texans have let this situation and this relationship kind of dissolve to the point where we're at now.
Right. If you're the Houston Texans, as soon as Bill O'Brien left, if you're the owner, if you're Easterby, the first person you should be going to is Deshaun Watson. You should be going up to your quarterback and being like, okay, Coach O'Brien didn't work out here. We're going to try to go in a different direction. What's your opinion on this? Or we want to talk to you in the offseason and really figure out what's the best way to fix this. They just didn't seem to do that. Or they said to Watson, we're going to talk to you in the offseason. And then they hired Nick Caserio without talking to him. Now, I think Caserio is going to do a great job as a GM. He's coming from New England, where I know the personnel hasn't been fantastic the last couple of years, but they have a system that works. And if Caserio brings it there, he might be the only one that can mend the fences between Watson and the Houston Texans. But Watson was quoted as saying, somebody asked him if the Texans, if Cal McNair, the owner of the Texans, fired Jack Easterby, would that help? And Deshaun Watson said, I think the only thing that would help is if Cal McNair fired Cal McNair. So he's asking the owner to fire himself. That's not going to happen. So I think this is probably unsalvageable, unless maybe Bieniemy is the only guy that can fix this. Maybe Caserio, if they talk to Watson, they hire Bieniemy, and the three of them, Caserio, talk to him and say, the three of us are going to work together to fix this problem. That's the only way that's going to work in Houston. Otherwise, he's gone. And I think he's gone. I think he's going to be traded. If you're rebuilding and you're Houston, I don't think Houston's going to be good overnight, so you might want to trade him. I know that sounds crazy for a franchise quarterback. I love Deshaun Watson. I've loved him since he was at Clemson. They're probably going to cut J.J. Watt. They have a couple other guys that they're probably going to cut. The cap is going to go down, so they're not going to be able to spend a ton. So if you make the trade, say you make it with Miami, you get Tua. You get the 3rd pick in the draft, you get that pick back, and then you get a couple of future first-rounders. Your turnaround might be faster than if you kept Watson and didn't recoup all those draft picks. Because you don't have a first-round draft pick this year. So, I think with everything that's going on in Houston, it probably is best for both sides to trade Deshaun Watson if you can get a big haul in return.
And I think the problem's even bigger. There's also been reports this week that they're shopping J.J. Watt on the market as well in Houston. So I think that kind of points out to the fact. And if I had to make a prediction, Eric Bieniemy's not getting hired in Houston. He's going to be the offensive coordinator next year in Kansas City, okay? And they're going to have to trade Deshaun Watson. So it's just really what can you get back as far as assets, as far as draft picks and players in return. What's going to be worth it for Deshaun Watson, arguably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now? But yeah, Houston's got major problems right now, and it looks like it's going to be a big rebuild. And I think you hit it. Honestly, we're talking about the owner, and like you said, he's not going to move on. But we could go back to this. This goes back to months ago, which is a topic that we could probably even still bring up on the show. But the players taking a knee, the players taking a knee, the comment that Cal made about the inmates running the asylum. I think that showed a lot about where he stood and where he stood with his players. None of them like that. I know Deshaun Watson didn't like that. I think he's going to regret those comments. I think he probably already does. And if he doesn't, then, hey, go ahead and rebuild your NFL franchise because that's what you're going to have to do now. And what are you going to get for Deshaun Watson? But here's the key thing is other teams in the NFL, they're now in prime position to go ahead and steal him. They're in a prime position to go ahead and steal him. He does not want to play there. He wants out of town. Okay, it's almost like the James Harden situation. And is that going to be a steal? I know we're going to talk about that coming up. But is that going to be a steal? They gave up a lot of first-round picks. But I think someone's going to steal Deshaun Watson. And it's a franchise quarterback that Houston's never going to see again. So, yeah, we have a problem. We have a big problem. Our franchise quarterback's walking out the door. So let's move on to Kemba. Kemba returning to the Celtics. Big fan of the Celtics here. I know you are as well. I know our regional viewers are as well. So we're excited to get Kemba back to this lineup. We need him. I'm looking forward to watching him. What about you, Pat?
Yeah, no question. Last year, the last image that a lot of Celtics fans have of Kemba is his struggles in the Eastern Conference Finals and even before that in the second round of the playoffs. And that's not the player he is. I mean, he was not totally healthy last year. I know his knee wasn't 100%. He sat out the beginning of the year because he had his knee. I can't remember if it was scoped or he had something go on with his knee where he needed to wait to start the season. And I'm happy he's back. I think, with the condensed schedule, he's going to maybe sit back-to-back games or not playing the first game and then playing the second game. But, with the Celtics right now, they're actually playing the Sixers as we talk. They need that third guy who can create. You got Jason Tatum. You got Jaylen Brown. I think they're 2 top 30 players. I think that's unquestionable. You need a third guy who can penetrate, who can knock down shots with somebody in his face. I know Kemba's smaller and he gets exposed on defense a little bit, but you need him in there because once you have Kemba, then you kind of, everybody sort of slides down a peg when you get one of your stars back because now guys that aren't technically stars kind of can slide back to their regular roles. I think with Kemba and then when Tatum, I think is his best role. And I think it just helps the Celtics slide everybody down a bit. Now your bench is going to be pretty stacked because you're going to have Smart, Peyton Pritchard, Semi Ojeleye, who's playing well, possibly Tice, depending on what they do with the starting lineup, or possibly Robert Williams coming off the bench. So now you're going to have a nice second unit that can come out there. You can keep Kemba on the floor, or you can keep Tatum on the floor, and you can still have a solid second unit run by one of your starters, and you have 3 guys who can essentially run an offense on their own with role players rather than just it being Tatum and Brown every single time those are the two guys that got to create the offense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. I think it gives them another option, and he's a great option, a great scoring option, a scoring guard. He works good with the ball. He works good off the ball. He can distribute, okay? So he can still get guys the shots they need, like a Brown, like a Tatum, like a Tice underneath. So he can get other guys involved. I'm really excited to see him return to the lineup. Like you said, they're playing right now. I know he's on a minutes restriction. He's only playing about 20 minutes a night right now. I think you'll see those minutes kind of go up over the next week or two. He should be back to his normal haul between 38, 40 minutes a game. But I think it helps the Celtics out a lot. Gets, like you said, one of their stars back, lightens up the load on Tatum and Brown as far as having to score or having to play in those big moments. Because Kemba's that type of player. He can hit that game winner for you. You can look for him in those clutch moments, man. I've always loved Kemba. Obviously, this is a UConn guy, so he's regional to us. We've seen a lot of him. So I'm excited. I've always been excited. When we got him back, I said, hey, we're really not going to miss Kyrie that much. We'll talk a little bit about Kyrie going forward on the show. But, Kyrie, I don't really think the way Kyrie's playing now, he didn't play like that in Boston. He did not play like that in Boston. So Kemba's really come in. We haven't really missed a beat in that position. And I think you hit it on the head where it allows guys to slide back into their regular role, like a Marcus Smart, who's more of a sixth man. I think he obviously is in the position to be a sixth man of the year every single year with what he does coming off the bench, the excitement he brings, the defense he brings. In offense, I'm a football guy. I love offense. I'm an offensive coordinator. But in defense and in basketball, I'm all about defense. All about defense and basketball. Love seeing Marcus Smart come out there and put his hands on the floor and put some great defense out there and shut down a great scorer. So, yeah, I think it allows guys, like you said, to go back into their normal roles. And I think the Celtics are showing that, hey, they have a little bit more depth than we thought. The rookie Peyton Pritchard, man, he is playing really good right now. I think with Kemba being out, that gave him a little bit more of a chance to be able to shine. He got some more minutes, but I'd still like to see Brad Stevens mix him into the lineup and get him some good minutes here, even with Kemba returning.
Yeah, you definitely got to make sure that Peyton Pritchard still gets time. I think one of the biggest reasons they drafted him, he played 4 years of college basketball, so he was ready to go as soon as he came out of the draft. So I think Pritchard, especially with Kemba minute restriction, Pritchard and Jeff Teague are still going to be guys that are going to get time, whether Kemba's out there or not. And also, like you mentioned, Kemba can play off ball. But I think Kemba could play with Jeff Teague a little bit. Teague's a bigger guard who can still play the point. Kemba can play off of him, and then Teague can have the tougher assignment defensively because he's a little bit better defensive player. He's a little longer. He can cover some bigger shooting guards if that's the lineup they choose, or if that's kind of one of the substitutions they use throughout the game. But it's going to be interesting to see how they roll all these guys out. It's going to take time. Kemba's not going to come in now and just be lighting it up for 25 points a game either. It's going to take time. This is going to be a weird season like it is for everybody. The Celtics coming into tonight, we're in first place in the Eastern Conference Finals. I do think over the next couple of weeks with the COVID stuff, with Kemba coming back, they're still trying to work things out. I think they're going to drop a few games over the next couple of weeks, probably drop in the standings a little bit, and they'll go back up. It's going to be that type of season because of how the schedule is laid out. But sticking with the hardwood, we saw the big trade last week with James Harden going to the Nets. And, we want to now look at the outlook of what the Nets team is going to be like the rest of the season. And it's going to be interesting. You got three superstars there in Brooklyn who all like to shoot, like to take shots. They're all going to have to sacrifice a little bit. But right now, James Harden, overnight it looks like he lost 20 pounds. He looks pretty good right now.
Yeah, the rumor was that he was wearing a fat suit in Houston. Decided to take that off when he came over in the trade. But, that was just a joke going around on Twitter because he really did shed the pounds. I think that really goes to his work ethic, honestly. It goes to his work ethic, and it goes to that he was positioning himself to get traded. So that's all he was doing, positioning himself to get traded. Maybe Deshaun Watson wants to put on 5 or 10 pounds overnight. That might help him out. You never know. But I think James Harden kind of proved that, he's still one of the greatest players in the NBA. Came out in that first showing with the new team, drops a 30-point triple-double, proved that he's willing to give up shots to facilitate the ball to a Kevin Durant. So I know he's going to be playing fine with Kyrie. I believe Kyrie's actually active tonight, so it's going to be the first night that we're going to get to see the big three together. But here's my prediction. If those three can stay healthy, you're going to get to see them at least play in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think they could go further. They could go further if they can mesh together. I mean, you saw the other night that Harden and Durant meshed really well together, getting each other the ball. Like I said, Harden's really playing good. He's a dribble machine, and people think that can be like something that's bad at times, and it can if he decides that he doesn't want to pass the ball. But he can also dribble and facilitate, and I think that's kind of what you're seeing. He did the other night. Obviously had the triple-double. I believe he had 10 or 11 assists. I think when Kyrie comes back, you're going to kind of still see that production from James Harden. Kevin Durant he's looking like he hasn't missed a beat coming off that injury. He looks really good. Kyrie Irving, like I said, he's playing better now in Brooklyn than he did in Boston. So I just think the sky's the limit right now. If they can learn to mesh together, play well, play great on the defensive end, I think they can go at least minimum to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think over the next 2 seasons, I think this is going to work because I think you have guys who, for a short period of time, even in the past, you've seen be able to sacrifice shots to win, right? You've seen Kyrie do it in Cleveland when he was playing with LeBron, and then he would step up in big moments. It was Kyrie taking the big shots. It wasn't necessarily LeBron. LeBron might have been making the play, but it was Kyrie knocking down the big shots in the playoffs for the Cleveland Cavs. So I think maybe for a season or two, he's going to be able to kind of swallow his pride, not take as many shots, and allow Harden and Durant to get shots too. You already saw it with Durant in Golden State, able to take less shots and be in a championship team for a year or two. And then it seemed like that third year is when Durant being in Golden State and everybody was kind of getting sick of it. Like, okay, I'm not getting the shots that I want with, Curry and Thompson, but especially Draymond Green, because he then became the fourth guy. And after a couple of years, it makes it tough. And I think that's why dynasties don't happen as much as we often think they do, because of, guys got to be unselfish. So I think, over the next year or two, I think it's going to work. But I think after that, that's when you're going to see maybe they start to kind of crumble a little bit. But I don't think the Nets care. If they win a title in the next 2 years, none of that's going to matter.
It could be one of those all-out plays like Danny Ainge pulled when he pulled the trade for Kevin Garnett. And then it worked that year. We went ahead and won the title, right? I believe it was that year once we got him.
2008.
Yeah, so, it could be one of those plays. And if it is, then my hat's off to the Nets GM, I think. And it possibly could be. So far they're looking amazing right now. And it could be one of those trades. I still think Houston turned out well in the trade, obviously, with all the assets they got in return. But, yeah, I think the Nets are looking really good right now. I'm really curious to see how Kyrie inserts himself into this lineup, and is he going to look to facilitate more? You were 100% right, though. Kyrie's a big shot getter, and he definitely hit that shot LeBron didn't to win the title there. And I think he proves that he can play in clutch moments. So it's like you got 3 guys that can hit the game-winning shot there. So I think it's hard for any team, especially defensively, to try to stop this Nets team right now. So we're going to kind of see what they do going forward on this season. But moving forward to a big topic, a topic that I've wanted to talk to you about for a couple weeks now, is the NCAA bubble for men's basketball that they're going to be setting up in Indiana, in the Hoosier State, baby. The Hoosier State of basketball. That's why I've wanted to talk about it. I just think it's so fitting that they picked the state of Indiana.
Yeah, I think this is great. Just thinking about last year, and the pandemic had just really kicked in, or at least we knew about it and knew exactly what we had to start doing right before the NCAA tournament started, and you saw the tournament get canceled. And that's, March is one of my favorite sports months. You always have, or even April is one of my favorite sports months, because in April you have the NCAA finals, you have the Masters, you have the NFL draft, you have the start of baseball. It's just basketball and hockey are kicking into late in the year and into the postseason, and you just didn't have that because something felt missing, because you didn't have any of those things. And now that we know that the NCAA is going to make adjustments to make it work during the pandemic, I think is great. And they now that they know how to do this stuff, I think this makes all the sense in the world. So from what I understand, they're going to have 6 different locations for games. in Indianapolis and in the surrounding areas. So you got Lucas Oil Stadium where the Colts play. I think they're going to have 2 courts there. Then you have Indiana University's field house. You have the Pacers arena, and I think the Indiana Fever, the WNBA team plays there as well. You have another smaller field house. I think it's the Farmers Field House. That's about 6,500. Then you have Purdue and Butler's gyms that are just outside of Indianapolis, that are, bus trips away from the city that teams and fans and folks are going to be able to go to as well. And then you also have the NCAA headquarters in Indianapolis. So I think it makes total sense to have it all there, have it in one location. You don't have teams jumping on planes after winning. You don't have teams jumping on planes after losing. They all get there. I don't know if they're going to try to space it out where you're there for a few days. They get tested and then they start playing. I would imagine they're going to try there earlier than normal. If a team wins their conference tournament, which I believe they're still going to have in the bigger conferences, sometimes it happens on a Saturday or Sunday. I would imagine you're just going to fly out to Indianapolis right after that, not even wait, and then get there, get tested, and then you have a few days before you play a game where guys aren't getting sick or coaches or staff members and so forth. So I think it's a great idea to keep everybody in one place, and it's great that they can do this too. And it's great that there are surrounding universities that have these facilities where you can house all these things.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think this is a great decision. And like I said, especially picking the state of Indiana. I mean, first you got the movie Hoosiers. You've got Indiana, right? The College of Indiana, the Bobby Knight, right? Reggie Miller, right? Larry Bird. I mean, the history of basketball. Granted, basketball was started right here in Massachusetts, okay? We'll take that claim to fame all day long. However, though, Indiana's got a great history of basketball as well. So I think they picked a great state to have it in, unless it was in Massachusetts, but if they had to have it anywhere else, having it in Indiana makes complete sense. And then you brought up a great point where the NCAA headquarters is right there, so they can have their hands all over it, make sure everything's going, make sure it's going to go off without a hitch. I think the big story is you're going to have 64 teams come in there, spreading them out, obviously, with social distance, but having them in different hotels. But I think this gives a chance for professional sports to go ahead and take a look, because professional sports has said, hey, we cannot provide a bubble for our players. And I know it's a lot longer than just a few weeks, which the NCAA March Madness would be. So I know the NFL or NBA season would be a lot longer and it's more months. But I think this is going to go ahead and prove that you could possibly have a bubble with 64 teams for a few weeks and have it work out and have it probably work out without a hitch. Get all the games in, cut it down to 32 teams at that point. So obviously each time you're going to have less teams that are going to stick around. But I think it's a great move by the NCAA to bring March Madness back. I think it was something definitely, like you said, that we were all missing in 2020. So to have it back in 2021 is extremely exciting. I was really excited to hear this news. And I think it was smart of them to go ahead and announce it already, to say, hey, we've got a plan. We've got a plan. We're going to get it done. We're going to get the tournament done. Play your season out. Get yourself in the tournament. And, we'll see you in March. And so it's great that they have a plan. I'm loving it. I'm loving that NCAA basketball is back. I know we're going to be talking about it a lot more on this show. Some teams are looking really good. Jawan Howard has his Michigan team looking really top-notch. I watched a little bit of them last night. I believe they won the game. They were up by 20. I changed the channel. Wasn't too entertaining. But they were up by 20 at the time, and they're on a team that was an 11-1 team at the time. So they're playing really good. What's really crazy, though, about NCAA basketball right now is you got some powerhouse teams like Duke, Kentucky that are not in the top 25. So we're going to have to see if they can crawl themselves back into where they belong. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this bubble come March in Indiana in the NCAA bubble, and I know we're going to be talking about it more.
No question. And it's just we all love watching the tournament. We all fill out a bracket, and illegally or legally, we're betting on it too. So, that'll be back, which will be great. It's going to help the hotel industry in Indiana, although I don't know how much of social distancing they're doing in that state. But, it's going to help those type of places that are struggling right now. So they'll be getting some revenue there as well. But, if anybody's been to Indianapolis too, it's a cool city. I actually like Indianapolis. It's a smaller, big city. It's easy to walk around, but it's not like right on top of you like you're in New York or like you're in Chicago or even Boston, where everything's very condensed. It's a big city, but you can kind of move around without going through all this crazy traffic and everything. So I think it's a great idea. The thing is too that not having the NCAA tournament last year had an effect on the NBA draft. I mean, we went into the draft, everybody was talking about how this class isn't good. There's not enough good players in this draft. Now we're seeing that they actually, James Wiseman's really good. LaMelo Ball's really good. We'll see what happens with Anthony Edwards. I think he's going to be good. Peyton Pritchard, is a good player. And I think guys like Peyton Pritchard and some other guys that we didn't see as much last year, we might have seen in the tournament. A lot of times out east, we don't really see a lot of Pac-12 games. We don't see a lot of, games from Arizona, or California and some of those teams out there. So we often see those players in the tournament. We missed that this past year. So that's why guys like Peyton Pritchard go kind of unnoticed amongst fans, across NCAA and NBA football. And I think we're going to see guys, in the draft that we're going to know a little bit better when they come out for the NBA draft, because I think that's going to make things a little bit more interesting. We're going to see guys, really shine during the NCAA tournament that we might not have known about beforehand. So that's going to be a lot of fun this upcoming season. Any more final thoughts, Brandon, from the NCAA bubble?
I think one thing is that you hit it big. I think it's definitely going to help the economy, especially of Indiana. I mean, bringing even in that many teams, right? You're going to have to house them, feed them, for at least 64 teams for probably 2 weeks minimum. So yeah, I think it will help the economy, and it's definitely going to help our country because, like you said, people are going to be looking forward to having March Madness back.
Yeah, no question. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. We're obviously going to be looking forward to a lot of fun things coming up the next few weeks, but obviously we got the NFL Conference Championships coming up on Sunday. We'll be sure to be talking about those next week. But folks, we want to thank you for joining us this week. Been a lot of fun as always. Brendan, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can see our Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen. Make sure you check that out. You want to follow us on Twitter. You also can subscribe to Comeback Sports on YouTube. Just type in Comeback space Sports in that search section in YouTube. You'll find us. You'll see our pictures there. My picture's from like 15 years ago. That's fine. I look like I'm 12. It's all good. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Also, jump in on the chat if you want to chat during a live show. Also, you can check out our producer, Ben Kudo, who does a fantastic job, cuts up segments from the show, so you can check out segments by themselves, or you can watch the whole show afterwards as well, folks. Thank you again for joining us here on Comeback Sports. We'll see you next time. Have a good week, everybody.